As tensions between Israel and Iran take center stage, a deadly humanitarian crisis in Gaza is unfolding with far less attention. Let's get some insight on what's happening there in the West Bank by turning to Zaha Hassan, human rights attorney and senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Gaza has been referred to recently as the hungriest place on earth. Can you tell us what's happening there?
Yeah, I think probably the best way for me to get viewers to understand what's happening is to try to make an analogy here. Let's imagine that the city of San Francisco, Oakland, and San Jose, with over 2 million people, were locked into their cities by fences and guarded by a foreign military. Now imagine that no food, water, or medical supplies were allowed in since March 2nd, and that all the buildings, around 90% of the buildings and homes, were destroyed. That means no grocery stores, and the agricultural land's been destroyed, and all the water sources. And now imagine that the guards are only giving these 2 million people 4 locations where they can access food. And obviously these 2 million people are starving at this point because they haven't had food since March. And if you approach the locations too early, you get shot. If there's too many people at the locations, they get shot. And if they linger too long after the food is distributed, they get shot. Now, this is what's happening in Gaza today. We have almost 550 starving people that have been shot now trying to access food, and 4,000 wounded.
Back now to the deadly humanitarian crisis unfolding in Gaza right before the president started to speak this morning on the Supreme Court decision sparked by his order to end birthright citizenship. We were talking live with Zaha Hassan, human rights attorney and senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. I am glad you're back.
Thank you.
All right, reaching into that heavily guarded distribution hub, just the 4 of them there in Gaza, has become a life-risking endeavor for Palestinians. As you look at the crisis, how do you expect to see the situation unfold?
You know, this is not an act of God. This is a man-made crisis that we're seeing. It's because Israel made the decision back in March 2nd to cut off all humanitarian aid to Gaza's 2 million people and has left them starving in the meantime. This Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is grossly misnamed because it's anything but humanitarian, is really causing a lot of more death than it is healing people and giving them relief. And in fact, the Israeli military itself has opened up war crimes investigations into the killing of 450 Palestinians trying to access food. It's incredibly inhumane. That's why the Army veteran, the U.S. Army veteran who was supposed to head the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, quit before it even started for him, because he believes that it's not impartial, it's not humanitarian, and it's going to reduce Palestinians into the situation that we're now seeing unfold.
What do you want to see happen?
Look, we have to open up all the crossings in Gaza and allow a surge of humanitarian aid in. The International Court of Justice, which is the judicial arm of the United Nations, ordered Israel back in 2024, in January 2024, to do so. This was in the context of a genocide case that South Africa brought against Israel because of its policies in Gaza. So what has to happen is exactly what the court said has to happen, which is relief needs to be surged at scale, and the UN has to be allowed to do their work. The UN is the only capable body that can surge the aid in, and Israel has criminalized the UN.
And finally, in the minute we have left, what do you want people who've only casually been watching the situation to know?
Well, I want folks to know that the arms that are being used to kill these starving people, they're coming from the United States. I want people to know that the U.S. government has just announced that it's going to provide $30 million to the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation rather than pushing for the UN to have access to Gaza. And that makes us as Americans complicit in what's taking place in Gaza.
All right, we'll have to leave it here. Zaha Hassan, human rights attorney and senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Thank you again for joining us.